This is the event of the year for my kids. They leave totally elated.
My 7-year-old, she's in the front row. She loves it. The energy in there is just amazing.
They're very excited. They love it. They can't wait for this week every year.
They've been asking about VBS for a couple of weeks leading up to it and when it starts.
Wake up in the morning and are ready to get going. They get dressed and get their hair done themselves.
When we're signing them up and they know they're coming, they're really excited. They get to hang with their friends. It's great to have them come and be around other kids that care about worship.
It's time to worship God. Here we go, bump it up. It's time to worship God. Worship God.
They love to come home with their arts and crafts and show me what they've made and who they made it with and the story behind what they did with it.
They've been really pumped about the skits particularly. They think they've gotten better and better every day, and then also telling me about the Bible stories that they've learned about throughout the week. Noah's Ark, the Transfiguration. They've been just excited and eager to share.
Noah's Ark, that's one thing they wanted me to build a boat and I was like, okay, let me build a paper boat.
They just talk about, they learn new songs about Jesus, learn about how Jesus loves us and to take care of each other.
They love the music, the worship, and just being with lots of kids. We sing all the time, and she tells me the story, of the day. I wish school was like VBS because then I would never have a problem getting them up in the morning.
They've got some verses that they've brought home. They've got some teachings from their teacher. They get so excited about sharing it with us at home.
When I get home, they tell me the Bible verse and are excited to talk about what they learned and the songs. They want to practice them.
She usually talks about the dance moves and punching sin away.
Worship God.
The coolest part is that they're able to tell me what they learned. They can tell me everything about Noah. Then they learned about the 10 Commandments and they're actually using it. They're like, you need to make sure that you're listening to mom and dad, or hey, don't steal.
Whatever they're learning in here, they came back to the house and they started applying things at back home. So it was pretty nice to see that way.
This part of the community is very important. The outreach and bringing kids into the community and showing them like values under Jesus.
We love you, God.
Well, good afternoon. I hope it's just a taste. You just get a taste of what's been going on here over the last week, and we still have another week to go. Our studio team just did a spectacular job. I loved how they did that this year. Each year, after the first week of VBS, we just kind of get a little bit of a recap, a little bit of a taste. We do that, one, so we can capture it, to see what's going on. But we also do that as a way of invitation, as a way of saying, hey, here's what's happened, and you're not going to want to miss out on it at all. But this year, our studio team, our video team, they took a little bit of a different angle. And rather than asking the kids what they experienced, which is so incredibly important, they asked the parents, like, what's happening in your kids? To have your kids, what have your kids been telling you? And I don't know if you heard in the middle of that, there was the one parent who said, yeah, my kids, they come home and they tell me about the Bible stories. They told me about Noah and the 10 Commandments, and then the 10 Commandments and the Transfiguration. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was 4th, 5th, 6th grade, I couldn't have told you anything about the Transfiguration, but we have these grade schoolers that are coming home and they're telling all about what happened when Jesus revealed himself and who he truly is, and how that just absolutely transformed not just him, but everybody around him. These 2 weeks here at Hope, it's a full-blown revival. And some of you, you have your kids, you have your t-shirts, you were here this past week, and way to go. And for those of you who are volunteers, thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Across all of our campuses last week alone, we had 2,000 people volunteer to help make VBS happen. That's incredible. We had thousands of kids that were here. And we can get by. We can do it. I want you to continue to invite kids. If you have kids in your house, invite them. If you have kids in your house that are past the age of being able to be a camper at Hope Mountain, have them be a volunteer. That's what our kids did. It's can't miss week in our house during the summer. We had they had their cousins here. Our sister-in-law, she brought 4 of their kids. Our house had 9 people in it this past week. And it was awesome. And two of the cousins, we would go to bed every night, and one of the things we would do at the end of the week is we would ask everyone, my son Trey, my daughter Jade, and then Kyle and Skyley. Kyle's a 6th grader, Skyley's a 4th grader. And we'd ask them, like, what's your favorite part of the last week? They've been coming the last few years, spending a week here in Iowa. What's your favorite part? Now, they went to the pool. And they got to go to Chick-fil-A, and they got to go out to eat, and they went to an aquarium, and they went to a bird sanctuary, and they got to do all the incredible things. And Kyle said it, and he said the same thing last year. He said, my favorite part of this whole week is going to Hope Church to VBS. And it just reminds me of how we so easily sometimes underestimate the power of God's word. We underestimate the power of what God is doing and what God has the power to do in all of our lives if we just give him a little bit of space. And so if you have a kid, get him involved in VBS. If there's a kid in your neighborhood that you don't like, get him involved in VBS, because God will change him. If you have the opportunity, volunteer this next week at Hope Mountain VBS. It's amazing, and it's an incredible party. We say it around here a lot. There is no party like a Jesus party. We say it here, and we don't say it as a catchy tune, a catchy phrase. We say it because it's true. There's a lot of parties that we throw. There's a lot of parties that we're a part of in the lives that we live, a lot of things that we celebrate. But there is no party like a Jesus party. There just isn't. Like, there's a lot of parties that we go to, but none of them can rival the party that happens when we come together in worship, when we come together in VBS. You're a part of a party right now. Welcome to the party. My kids are incredibly involved in activities. They're gone a lot on the weekends for their sports. And just not too long ago, there was a parent, I had to leave early because there was games that were going into Saturday into Sunday. And so my wife and I, we tag team a lot. So like, I'll be there for part of the tournament. She'll come for the latter part of the tournament. Our kids always hit worship at least online, if not in person. Like, that's a non-negotiable in our house. And so as I was leaving, one of the parents around me said, well, you must get so disappointed when you have to leave the games early. I said, are you kidding me? I get to go home and worship. We only get to do this 52 times during the year. My kids will play hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games. And I love their games. I love being a part of their games. I love watching them do but there is one opportunity that I get to come together with my church family. There's one opportunity each week that I get to come together with you, to come and to celebrate the party that happens when Jesus' love and his life is proclaimed. There's no party like a Jesus party, but unfortunately, the world around us sometimes has a skewed idea of what this Jesus party is all about. A lot of people, when they think about Jesus or think about Christians or they think about the church, they think, oh, it's a yawner, it's boring. I'd like to do church, I'd like to do faith, but it just seems like something that's just not relevant to me or relevant to my life. It seems like I'd go to church when I was a kid and all of a sudden all these things would happen. It would seem like I just want to fall asleep. I'd invite you to come to VBS. I'd like you to try to fall asleep during VBS. A couple years ago, the best man in our wedding, his name is Dave, and his wife Louise, they came from Moorhead, Minnesota, and they came to visit us down here in Des Moines. And Dave and Louise were going to come to worship with us, and it was an Ash Wednesday service of all services. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with the church, Ash Wednesday is this midweek service that we have going into the season of Lent. And Ash Wednesday service is what you do is you acknowledge the fact that you're a sinner. Now, that doesn't seem like a party to me. That doesn't seem like one of those services that you'd come to and be like, oh, I get to go to Ash Wednesday service. And so we were coming, and Dave and Louise knew what Ash Wednesday was all about. And as we're walking up to the building, Louise looked at us and she's like, it's like an event that's happening. The energy in this place, it's electric. What's going on? It's Ash Wednesday. People shouldn't be coming to church and being excited about it. Maybe it's because you haven't had the opportunity to encounter Jesus in a radical way. Sometimes people will say, well, maybe it's not the fact that it's boring. Maybe it's the fact that people who follow Jesus or Christians or the church is just full of a bunch of people who are angry. Shame on us. Shame on people who follow Jesus if what the rest of the world sees in the church, in Christians, in Jesus followers is nothing more than anger. Shame on us. How dare we do that? How dare we approach the world around us that desperately needs to know that there is a God who loves them and would come away with the feeling that all I received from those people was their anger, was their judgment. That's not what it's all about. We're called to be different. And we got to really hold on to this one because it's soon to be August. Can you believe it's going to be August in just like a little over a week? And then August is going to be followed by September, and September, October, and October into November. And these next 4 months, we need to be reminded that we're not called to be angry. We're called to be people who love. We swim upstream in a downstream world. Some people say, well, it's not the fact that it's boring or filled with a bunch of people who are angry. It feels like the people in the church are they're disconnected. They got their head in the sand. It's like the whole world is going on around them, and they just kind of like go off on their own, and they just separate themselves from the rest of the world. It's not what we're called to do. One of the things I love the best about VBS is the music that we do. And all of the music that we do, you heard it in that video clip. That last song, John Denver song. And we take the John Denver song, Rocky Mountain High, and we change it into Lift Jesus High. And we change the word. So we take the culture and we take the music that kids listen to and we listen to, and we change it. Because we're not disconnected. And as a church, Jesus wasn't disconnected from any part of culture, from any part of society. He hung out with the people who were religious, and he hung out with the people who were far away from God. So are we called to do the same thing. What we're going to talk about this series that we're entering into, it's a 5-week series, There Ain't No Party Like a Jesus Party, is this whole thing, can I be a Christian and still have fun? Honestly, how would you answer that? Thank you. All right, you want to come up and preach? We can switch spots. There we go. No, can we have fun? Can we be a Christian and have fun? Can we be a Christian and still be somebody who experiences joy? Absolutely. In fact, one of the last things that Jesus says before he's going to lay his life down is Jesus says to his disciples, he says to his followers, he says to you and he says to me, he says, I've told you all of these things. I've told you the whole message that I've come. I've told you about this kingdom. You've seen all the things that I've done. You've heard all the things that I've said. And I've told you all of this so that you will be filled with my joy. Everybody say joy. You would be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy would overflow. My question for you tonight is, do you have joy? Are you filled with joy? Like where you find yourself right now. The season of life that you're in. The circumstances that surround you. The people that surround you. Are you able to still be filled with joy? Now there's a difference between joy and happiness. And what we see in this story that Fiona read for us just a few minutes ago, the story of Jesus and the first miracle that Jesus performs. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 Gospels. Gospel means good news. The Gospels are stories, the stories about Jesus. And the first miracle that's accounted in the Gospels is from the Gospel of John. And in John's Gospel, there are all of these things that John's trying to make sure that the people who read his Gospel, that hear his Gospel, hear his account of Jesus' life, John wants to make sure that people can't miss the fact that Jesus is in fact God. So John tells about these miracles, these signs that point to who Jesus truly is. And the first miracle that John accounts is in John chapter 2, and it's Jesus who's at a party. He's at a festival. John 2, verses 1 and 2, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were there too. They didn't look at the party, they didn't look at the celebration and say that they had no place there. They didn't look at the party, they didn't look at the celebration and say that maybe all the people that were there, they were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. That's not what the point of the story is at all. But Jesus and his disciples and his mother, they're at this party. Now they're at this celebration, they're at this wedding. Now the weddings in the time of Jesus are much different than the weddings that we experience today. Weddings that we have today are weddings that we plan for a year and we celebrate for a few hours. Well, in the time of Jesus, the wedding celebrations were celebrations that would last anywhere from 5 to 7 days. And the family would host this wedding celebration, and everybody from the entire village would be invited to come and celebrate this wedding, this marriage that was going to take place. And so Jesus was there, his mother was there, his disciples were there, and all of a sudden they encountered a problem. And Jesus' mother comes to Jesus and shares with Jesus that the wine had run out, and that Jesus needed to do something. And Jesus' initial answer is quite different than his final answer. Take a look.
Watch out for the frogs this time. Oh, sons of Jonah!
We were just looking for you. Dancing to the song of Miriam, and we thought you wouldn't want to miss it.
Of course. Let's the three of us show them how it's done, huh?
I don't think that's such a good idea.
Why?
Andrew has 4 left feet.
4? Why 4?
When he tries to dance, he looks like a donkey walking on hot coals.
Oh, Andrew, do you deny it?
I've never seen a donkey walking on hot coals. Actually, that would be a terrible thing to behold.
My son.
Ah, Andrew, you see, even my own mother will join us in the Song of Miriam.
They've run out of wine.
But it's only the first day.
Yes, and it's all gone. Not a drop left.
Why are you telling me this?
We can't let the celebration end like this. And the Etcher's family humiliated.
Boys, go join the others. I'll be right there. Mother, my time has not yet come.
If not now, when? Please. Do whatever he tells you.
The wine had run out. And Jesus' mother comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, you have to do something. See, for Mary, there was never a doubt on who Jesus was, on who her child was. Remember, the angel had appeared to Mary and told Mary exactly who this child she was going to give birth to truly was. And so Mary was there and saw that the wine had run out. And so she goes to Jesus and she says, Jesus, you need to do something. You need to do something. He says, dear woman, it's not my time. My time has not come. And did you hear what she said? And this is just the way that the writers of The Chosen, they interpret this portion. It's their editorial comment. But I love the way they put it. And Jesus' mother says, if not now, when? And see, what I want to make sure that we see is this celebration, this party, this thing that Jesus does at the wedding at Cana in Galilee is so much more. It's so much more. It's so much deeper. We could read this story and we'll say, hey, cool, that's cool. Like there was the celebration, the wine had run out and Jesus came, he performed a miracle and the party just continued on. But the party that Jesus is inviting us to in this story is far deeper than what happens at this wedding celebration. It's far more important than what's going on at this wedding celebration. It doesn't minimize the celebration of that wedding. It doesn't minimize the people who are at the celebration. But what Jesus is doing in this very first miracle touches something that's so far deeper than that it gets to the very root of our soul, of who we are. Because the people at this wedding site, their reputation, it depended on whether or not they were able to provide for the guests that were there. So if the wine were to run out, what would be people's opinion of them? Maybe people would think that they were cheap, or maybe people would think that they had planned poorly, or maybe people would think that they just didn't have enough. And then Jesus comes along and realizes them and their need. On the surface, we can say, well, this need isn't that big of a need. But we do that a lot in our own lives. When we say, well, there's this thing that's going on in my life, and I'd love to tell God about it, and I'd love for God to do something about it, but I just don't think it's that important. Like, it's just this. Why do we say it's just this so much in our lives, so many times in our lives? You see, because of God's heart for us, our well-being is very important to God. The wholeness of who we are, our experience in our day-to-day life is incredibly important to God. So important that he sent his son Jesus into our lives. And sometimes when we start to think that, well, it's just this and it isn't that important, we start to wonder if maybe we're an afterthought. When our kids were little, they're only 18 months apart in age, and when our kids were little, there was this back and forth, and I think that all kids that are siblings, they go through this where like we would do one thing for one kid and the other kid would be like, oh, you love that other one more than you love me. You ever done that? I did that to my parents all the time. Well, you just love them more than me, or you like them more than me. And really what that's coming down to is the feeling like maybe they're more important than I am. And one of the things that we would say to our kids all the time is like, they'd say, well, you love Jade more than you love me. And we'd say, well, that's impossible. I literally couldn't love you any more than I love you. And I couldn't love her any more than I love her. And my love for you does not diminish my love for her. And my love for her does not diminish my love for you. And I just wonder how many times in your life that you started to wonder about God and his opinion towards you and his love for you and his intentions towards you. And you started to wonder, well, if I'm this and they're that, then maybe his love for me is a little bit less and his love for them is a little bit more. And maybe when it comes to God and his opinion about me and his intentions for me, maybe I'm just more kind of an afterthought. There is no afterthought when it comes to God. There is no ranking when it comes to God. There is no hierarchy when it comes to the kingdom of God. Like your well-being and who you are as a person and what God wants for you and what God desires for you. And the way God's heart breaks when your heart breaks couldn't be any less, and it couldn't be any more. Like his love for you it's perfect. And the importance of who you are and everything about you, I can't overstate this, is of the utmost importance to God. And you're like, oh, no. I'm just me. Yeah, you are just you, created in the image of God. So valuable in the eyes of God that if you were the only person who lived on the face of the earth, Jesus still would have gone to the cross and died for you. You are the apple of God's eye. You are not an afterthought. The people at this celebration, they had a need, and Jesus, he had something to do about it. But here's the thing about the story is it wasn't about the wine. Because if we misread this, we can say, well, then Jesus just wanted the party to keep going. That's not what Jesus was doing. Let's take a look at this. John chapter 2. So standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Now here's where the story gets incredibly fun. So in the Jewish culture, the way in which you could come into a relationship with God is you had to be morally clean and you had to be physically clean. 8 years ago, my wife Bridget and I, we were in the Holy Lands. We were in Nazareth. We were in Galilee. We were in Jerusalem. We got to make the whole tour. It was fantastic. And anytime we would go to a place, in our hotel, we would go and we would get ready to eat breakfast in the morning. And at the breakfast, in front of the breakfast, there was a basin for washing. And there was a basin, and then there was a water jug filled with water that was for your ceremonial washing. You had to wash yourself. If you were Jewish, you had to wash yourself before you could eat. And the water pitcher had 2 handles on it. And the first time I looked at it, I'm like, what's with the 2 handles? Is it just like if you're a righty, you take this one? If you're a lefty, you take this one? Well, no, actually what you did is you would grab by one handle, and that was the handle that was dirty. And you would take the jug from that handle and you would wash the one hand that was now clean, ceremonially clean. And then you'd grab the jug by the clean handle and wash the other hand that was dirty in order to be clean. So Jesus, you can't miss this. Jesus goes to these basins of water, and these basins of water were used to cleanse people so that they could be clean before a God who is holy. And Jesus takes the water that would cleanse them ceremonially and changes it to wine. And, well, you know what we do in worship when we come to the table and we receive the gift of God in the bread and in the wine or the grape juice. It wasn't about the wine. It was about a God who saw the world that he loved. And he says, you want to know what it means to be cleansed? Here's my blood. Here's my blood. At the Last Supper where Jesus and his disciples are there and he takes the cup of wine and he gives thanks and he gives it for them all to drink. I'm sure their mind is going back to the very first miracle and it's just going, they're like, oh. We thought that it was just about being cleansed, and now we know it's about being made whole. And the beautiful thing is it's this cleansing that Jesus offers it's more than enough. There's an abundance and not a scarcity when it comes to God's love and the gift he has for you, the gift he had for this celebration, this party. So standing nearby, 6 stone water jars for Jewish ceremonial cleansing, and each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. You think about it, you do the math. Conservatively, 120 gallons of wine. Up to 180 gallons of wine. And what Jesus has to offer is abundance. What Jesus always has to offer is abundance. Just always does. There's this mindset that we have. My dad's mom came over from Norway. My dad's dad came over from Sweden. I have Scandinavian just like deep inside of me. And there's this thing that my grandma, I never met my grandpa. He was born in 1886. He died before I was born. But my grandma, she had this thing where when we would give her something, she would always say, oh, that's just too much. So like you could give my grandma, I could give my grandma for Christmas, I could like draw her a picture, and I'm a horrible artist. And I'd give it to her and I'd wrap it up and I'd give it to her and she'd open it up and she'd be like, oh, sweetheart, that's just too much. You shouldn't have done that. You'd get something for her or you'd give something to her, and her mindset was always like, you shouldn't waste so much on just little old me. And there's this thing, I think that all of us think, like, oh, when somebody does something for us that's extravagant, our knee-jerk reaction is to say, oh, that's just too much. You shouldn't have done that. But that's not God's kingdom. It just isn't. Like God's kingdom is like, oh no, I have this for you and I have so much more for you. Because you might think it's just little old me, but I think, oh, it's oh so beautifully you. Jesus doesn't turn just enough to say, hey, raise your hand if you need a cup of wine. Raise your hand if you have enough to drink. Raise your hand if you need something. No, Jesus takes 120 to 180 gallons of water, changes it to wine so that the guests would know that all their needs would be fulfilled. that the abundance wouldn't stop. That's God's love for you. This miracle, this story is so much deeper than we catch at first glimpse. Sometimes we think about the first miracle, the water to wine, we say, well, this is just like this is like the appetizer before the main course. This kind of greases the wheels a little bit so we get ready for the real miracles. There's nothing more miraculous than this story. God's love doesn't run out, and the gifts that he has for you, they don't run out. And what he has for us, it's the best. It's absolutely the best. He doesn't feel like giving us anything would be wasteful. I mean, sometimes we feel like we're not worthy of the best, or sometimes we only want the best. And Jesus hits us in both places. Changes the water to wine, and then he gives the servants some of the wine, and he says, go bring this to the master of ceremony, to the MC, to the one who's like keeping the party going. And they're like, oh my goodness, like his mom said, please just do anything that he asks, but he just took water and he turned it into wine, and it's in these stone basins, and this can't be any good. And so I'm sure they went to the master of ceremonies, and they went to the master of ceremonies with a little bit of trepidation, wondering, would they be ridiculed for this crazy thing that they had just been a part of? But when the master of ceremonies gets the gifts that Jesus has for them, he's overwhelmed. Take a look.
Go draw some out and serve it to the master of the banquet.
Oh, it's about time.
The latter vintage, sir.
Good, good. Let's have a taste.
Stop the music! Stop the music! Everyone, listen! I have something I would like to say. I would like to address the bridegroom and the bride families. At every wedding I've ever overseen, they serve the best wine first. And then, when the people have drunk freely, much later in the feast, they serve the poorer wine, the cheap stuff. Because by then, who is going to notice? Am I right? But you have chosen now to serve the best wine I have ever tasted. Let us thank them for this unnecessary but honorable gesture.
It's at the very end of that passage in John chapter 2 that Fiona read for us. It says, this miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed his glory. People that were there that day, they saw what he had done, and They were amazed by it. It wasn't about the wine. It was about what he'd done. That he comes into their midst. He comes into the celebrations of their life. He says, I have this gift for you. This gift that's the best, and I have it for you. Taste and see. Come and receive. Open your heart. Receive the gift. You're invited to this party. The next 4 weeks following tonight, we're going to look at these stories of Jesus and the way in which he encounters our lives in ways that are mind-blowing. If we can pause, we can step back and see what's truly going on. The wedding in Galilee. Jesus reveals his glory through what we can see on the surface might seem like one of the simplest of things. But it shows the character and the nature of a God that wants you to say yes to his love. Come and see, taste and see that the Lord is good. Jesus says later in John's gospel, he says, there's a thief in this world. There's a reality to the world that we live in. There's a reality to life this side of heaven where we experience things that take life from us. Physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually. But Jesus says, my purpose is different. My purpose, the reason I came into this world, is to give you a life that's worth living. To give you a life that's full, to give you a life that has purpose, that give you a life that has meaning, to give you a life where you are able to know who you are and able to know whose you are. The reason why VBS at Hope is such an extraordinary thing, it's not because of how great the skits are, the music are, how great the volunteers are, how great the program is. All of those things are wonderful, and we do our best. We try our hardest. Because Jesus deserves our best. But the reason why it's such a big deal isn't because of any of those things. The reason it's such a big deal is because we give kids the opportunity to encounter the God who says, come and follow. Come and see. Come and see this gift that I have for you. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss the invitation that God has for you. Don't miss the life that God offers for you. If you haven't done VBS, come this week to VBS. It's not too late. If you aren't able to, mark it in for next year. Come and join us next weekend at Taste of Hope, next Saturday night. You'll get a glimpse of heaven. Come to worship every week. It's the highlight of my week, every week. There's a lot of great things that happen. A lot of things we're celebrating. But 52 weeks, only 52 times. There's 350 days, over 350 days in a year. We only get to be together 52 times. Don't miss it. Make it a priority. Not for our sake, but for yours. Hear the good news of Jesus Christ, who says, come and see, come and taste how good this God is who called you here, who brought you here, who has a promise for you, that you matter, that his gift is abundant, that you are not an afterthought. And the best for you, the best for me, it's still to come. That our lives this side of heaven hopefully are 70 or so years. And their life is a gift. The invitation of Jesus is eternity. We get to do this 52 times a year together and hopefully for many more years. But in heaven, we get to do it all day, every day. Because that's how much he loves us. And the sermons won't be long, and the preacher won't be so incredibly good looking. But we'll be in the presence of God, face to face. To be seen and to know as fully as we possibly can. So we were created to be. It's not just water to wine. It's It's a gift of God's goodness and his grace and his abundance and the life that he has for you and the life he has for me. Come and see, taste and see that the Lord is good. So as we close with worship today, I'm going to invite you to stand. I'm going to invite the prayer partners to get into place. And this is a time where we're just going to worship. We have some time. We're just going to take a few minutes. We're going to worship. If you want prayer, we'd love to pray with you and pray for you. But come and see, taste and see how good this God is. Amen? Amen.
Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for Service Online.
If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We don't think it's any accident that you're here, and we have been praying for you.
To see more of our content, know when we go live, and stay up to date week to week, feel free to subscribe to this channel.
And if you live close by one of our campuses or local sites, we invite you to check us out in person. We would love to meet you. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date.
See you next week.